Let's say we have a dataset containing employee analytics, such as the education level, job satisfaction, performance rating, age, and so on, and we would like to predict whether an employee will leave the company. First of all, we can see some statistics on the dataset by going into the Actable AI app. After we have uploaded our dataset using either a CSV file, Excel file, or we can also connect directly to a dataset, okay, a database. We can also then search for the name of our dataset here. And once we find the dataset, we can open a new tab to see, um, first of all, our table, okay, our rows and the columns. And you can also filter our columns. For example, we only want to see rows where attrition is yes, okay. And then you can also see statistics on our dataset. So we can see if there are any missing values or null values, okay, and the overall distributions of our columns. Um, for example, in this case, we can see that employee count only has one value, okay, so this feature is perhaps not important, it could be dropped, okay, and this will help us to determine what features to use when training the model. We can also, if we want, see how the features are correlated to our target, namely the attrition. Okay, by going to statistics, correlation analysis, we can choose the table there. Um, and then we have some features that we need to choose. So if we had a time column, in this case we don't have one, we can select that here and we can also apply a filter. You can also apply filters to each column in our dataset. Then we need to select the correlation target. In our case, it's attrition, the correlation target value. So in our case, we might be more interested when employees are leaving the company. So in that case, it will be yes. And the compared factors, we can choose pretty much all of them. Okay, and we can then display the top 20 correlated features. And you can also display the bar values. Okay, once that's done, we can also give it a name and then run it. I already have one that was computed earlier, and that is here. So there are several interesting insights, okay, different variety of graphs. In this case, we have a bar chart of the correlation between our features and the target, okay. This is in the case if it's positive or negative. Then we have also a heat map here, okay. Um, yeah, and there are a lot of useful insights that can help us to determine what features are useful when training our model. Once that's done, we can then go to the Actable AI app again to perform the actual classification, okay, to determine if an employee will leave the company or not. So we go to the classification, again select our dataset, and then we need to select our options. Active AI makes it very easy to do this. So as before, we have the time column. If we had a time column, in this case we do not have one, then we need to choose the predicted target. Okay, in our case it's attrition, and the predictors. We can either choose a few of them or we can just go ahead and select all of them. We can also choose if there are any sensitive groups, that is groups that are protected against biases, any extra columns that are displayed in our results if we have not already chosen them as part of the predictors. We can also apply any filters to our columns to only use a part of our rows for training. We can also determine the training time limit, okay, how long the model will train. And then we have several options at the bottom here. So the first one, optimize for quality, will um, as the name suggests, try to train the models to optimize as much as possible the performance, but this may take a bit longer to run. Explain predictions will give us some insights as to the features, how they are contributing to the final result. And we can also perform cross-validation to perform more robust evaluation of our trained model. We can also go to the advanced tab to determine what metric to use for optimization. So we have several options here. We have accuracy, balance accuracy, ROC, AUC, okay, and several other features. We can go ahead and choose ROC, AUC, for example. We can also determine if features are pruned. So in this case, the model, okay, when training the model, Actable A automatically determines if there are features that are harming the performance of our model and removes them. Okay, so we can go ahead and select this. We can also select the amount of time that we want for the feature pruning to take place. Okay, optionally, we can also perform intervention. Okay, we can change the values of some column and determine the effect on the result. For now, let's just perform classification. Okay, once we're happy with all of these metrics, um, as a start, we can choose explain predictions to have better insights on our features and how they're contributing to the final result, and go ahead and select run. Once that's done, um, we can then see the results. I already have a result here. Okay, so in the first step, our performance tab, we can see first of all the results of our uh, using different performance metrics. Our chosen metric is at the very top, ROC AUC, which has a value of 0.852, and accuracy has 0.878. Okay, and there are obviously also the other metrics mentioned here. If you go further down, we can see graphs for the receiver operating characteristics curve here and for the precision recall curve. You can also see um, the threshold here, okay, which will be helpful to determine the point at which we can optimize our performance based on our preferences. We can also see a confusion matrix here. So in this case, we can see that when the class is no, the predicted class is also no 100% of the time. So in this case, the model successfully predicts the class to be no every time. Then we can see the list of important features. So after the model is trained, we determine which features have the most contribution on our result. In this case, we can see that overtime is very important, it's the most important feature. Stock option level is also important. The job satisfaction, the distance from home is important, which all makes sense to determine if an employee is going to leave the company or not. Going further down, we can see that, for example, gender has pretty much zero importance, which we would hope, okay, that gender does not play a role here. And then we can see the full table um, of results here um, with all of our columns. So as you can see, for each of these features, we have these values in green or red. These are the Shapley values, which determine the contribution of that value on the predicted result. So let's say we have the first row here. Um, in this case, the predicted attrition is yes. So that's based on the probability values. So I have two columns, one for each class, no and yes. In this case, the probability for yes is higher than no, so this is chosen as our selected class. And for example, if we go to um, years in current role, we can see that this value plus 0.11 indicates that the value years in current role has a positive effect. It increases the likelihood of our chosen class, which is yes in this case. Okay. Um, we can also do that obviously for the other columns. We can also filter our rows. In this case, I've filtered um, to only see rows where the predicted attrition is yes. I can also remove that to see uh, the other rows as well. Okay, and these then give us very important insights as to how the values of each feature contributed to our final predicted result. We can also see more information in the other tabs. If we go to the leaderboard, we can see a list of models here, okay, along with the value of the optimization metric that we used, the time taken to train it, the prediction time, the hyperparameters used, and the features that were chosen. This is especially useful if feature pruning is selected because uh, not all features might be used. There might only be a subset, so this list will tell you exactly which features were used. We can also see the original dataset that we had before, and we can also um, perform predictions of new data. So we can insert the values here for each column that we have, and finally we can get um, a predicted result of attrition, either yes or no in this case. We can also change the probability values here. Okay. Finally, we have a tab with the live API so that we can perform predictions on our full data set that we have. So to perform new predictions, okay, easily with the endpoint that we have of the trained model. Okay, and there are all sorts of information that is useful here to do that. We also encourage you to view the documentation at docs.actable.ai. In this case, we have the documentation for classification, okay? And it lists all of the information needed to run these models, okay? All of the different options, what sort of results you will expect to achieve, okay? How to interpret them, along with also a case study. So that was it for this tutorial. See you again in the next video.